All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present here at the Pipeline Safety Trust. I'm a little bit of an odd duck. I'm from the industry, but I work with NGOs, and I actually work for a nonprofit now called Texas 811. And as I go through my presentation, I would like to challenge you to think about what you can do in your own roles to enhance pipeline safety. And there's a couple of really commonsensical things that I would ask you to try to concentrate on, and then try to give some feedback to me on how we can bring your message back to a larger, more national audience. So this is me. I'll be around the entire conference. Please come talk to me. I have a lot of experience in the industry, and if I can't get you an answer, I'll do my best to get back with you or point you in the direction. So I do work for Texas 811, right? I also run a national program called Marine Safe 811. So I'm the waterway protector, right? At the end of the day, my focus is protecting waterways from spills and releases, and that's what I do. These three goals here are shared probably by everyone in this room. Prevent injury, save lives, protect the environment and infrastructure. Who in here has heard of the 811 National Initiative? Everyone, I hope, right? I'm not going to get all into it, but I can tell you that the unfortunate incident of the Olympic pipeline helped drive a lot of the national 811 damage prevention and public awareness campaigns. It was the incident that started dialogue among companies on awareness of pipelines and safety. And then because there was an excavation damage involved in the Olympic pipeline incident, of how to make that notification so the operators of those pipelines know how to go out and mark those facilities and identify those and communicate with the excavator. Also in the presentation, my niche is waterways, marine, protection of the water. And so I'll get into that as well. So I'm going to jump around here a little bit. But 811 is something that every person in this room can help enhance pipeline safety. End of the day, the 811 system is a free service. It's the call before you dig. You probably have seen those and heard those advertisements in your communities, in your neighborhood, and excavation safety, excavation damage, as we heard from Rich, is one of the leading causes of pipeline accidents. I'm also going to focus my presentation today on gas distribution, right? We heard a lot of good information from Rich on the liquid side, but I'm going to focus a little bit on gas. So, but what I want to impress upon you today is please help protect your communities and your environment. Everyone, this is all of our responsibilities, and by promoting the 811 system, call before you dig, can go a long way of doing that, okay? Excavation as defined by law, these are many different types, whether it's in marine areas or on land, but every state has excavation 811 call before you dig laws. And I'm just giving you some brief background so that way you can help educate your stakeholders in your community, and we can all work together to enhance pipeline safety. Okay, before the excavation begins, you make that notification, then the companies, by law in most all states, will go out and mark those lines, right? It's a free service in all states. And you will have a ticket that is assigned, and I'm not going to get into the process, but what you need to know is that the excavation and outside force damage is the majority of the releases in this country, and how can we all work together to prevent those. Okay, so making that call, defining your work scope, the operator's going to come out and mark the line, tell you where the line is so you can do that work safely. Also, there are the color codes. You probably see these color code, the color on the ground after you use, right, the 811 system. And this is what it means. I actually have some of these color code cards at the table. You can look them up. They're all over online. Okay, so again, and within excavation practices is what we call a tolerance zone, where you can only excavate within so many inches of that pipe or a utility. And even though our focus here is pipelines, all of these excavation and 811 practices apply to other types of utilities as well. So now I'll transition and get into gas distribution versus transmission. At a very high level, gas transmission is those larger diameter pipelines that transfer that natural gas from the production facilities into more of and transition into your distribution. In many cases, does everybody know what mercaptan is? Right? Mercaptan is the odorant that you put into the gas, that rotten egg smell. That's a regulatory substance that goes in at different points along the entire pipeline route. Typically, transmission lines, your larger diameter lines, your higher pressure, larger diameter trunk lines that are transporting that gas do not have mercaptan in it at that point. Right? It's regulated at what many people call a city gate that goes into that distribution network that goes to your homes, your businesses, many of these different entities that would use natural gas for heating. Okay, at that point at the city gate, that's where a place where mercaptan may be added, that rotten egg smell. So, very important point there. That is a regulation in distribution that odorant be added to the pipe. So right here, I do want to get back into the most serious accidents. This is classified by PHMSA, right? We throw that term around. Everybody knows that's the Pipeline Regulatory Agency. Although they have federal laws, most states adopt or are required to adopt PHMSA regulations within their state. Most of the time, gas distribution is those small lines going to your homes and businesses. Remember, the transmission is the large diameter lines. The regulated lines, right, the distribution lines are those smaller lines. They're usually regulated at a state level, not a federal level. The larger transmission interstate lines are regulated at a federal level. Intrastate lines are usually regulated at a state level. So serious accidents, fatalities, injuries, the number one cause of all accidents is outside force damage, and it is on the gas distribution systems. Over 4 times the amount of serious incidents happen on those smaller lines, feeding your homes, feeding your businesses. And some of the things to consider is, of course, right, when you think about it, there are many more of those lines. They're going to your home, so they're right next to where you live. They're in high activity areas. Many times these gas distribution systems are very old. They're shallow. They share areas with other utilities. And sometimes the mapping is not very good on these systems. So that way, when you actually try to make that 811 call, it's hard to identify some of those lines. So, and a lot of these distribution systems are in high populated areas. Again, this is why it's so important to use effectively that 811 system, right? It is the law. And once you make that call, then the liability changes to the operator, because now it's their responsibility to go mark the line and communicate with the excavator. So please help us advance the 811 message. So We talked about new technology, right? This is another emerging technology that I would like to bring to light. It's called fiber optic sensing. So it takes a fiber optic line that is as big as a hair on your head and can monitor those pipelines. Okay, at Texas 811, we actually have an on-the-ground operation on these lines, right? Or operating fiber optic sensing, and this is how it works, right? If there's some type of excavation or activity around the pipeline, it sends a signal to the operator, right? And it checks against the 811 system to see, was there a ticket made for this excavation? If there was not, it sends that alert to the operator that there's a potential safety condition there with an unauthorized excavation about to occur. We talked about air patrols, which is very good, but stuff like this is 24/7 operation. This is 24/7 monitoring, fiber optic sensing, right? And one of the emerging technologies that I think is really going to spread through the industry. We can see here this excavator. It is actually creating a digital footprint. Every sound you make, right? Clap, something, a vehicle, all has its own digital footprint. It monitors that and can tell the difference between a backhoe or a car or an 18-wheeler going over a line, or excavation, or even track leaks. And then it's able to take that information and detect whether that activity was reported or not, and send that alert to the pipeline operator so they can go investigate. Okay, so some pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to transition my last few slides here and talk about marine and waterway protection. That's really my specialty area, and talk about our new program called Marine Safe 811. It's not any different than the on-land program, except there's a huge gap between what we do in our efforts in protecting our waterways and what we do on land, especially when it comes to public engagement and in that space. And that's what I try to concentrate on, and that's what this program attempts to close that gap. So there are more underwater pipelines and facilities than you think. You might remember this Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse on the Dolly a few years ago. You know, there was a 24-inch natural gas pipeline underneath the bow of the Dolly. Thank God it didn't erupt. There was a fiber optic line and a water line also underneath that ship. This is what we call our poster child incident, the Corpus Christi accident. 5 fatalities. Unfortunately, it was a marine excavation that hit a propane line. I have a very short video I'm going to show at the end of this that actually is very telling what went on in this scenario. So we try to concentrate on outreach to those marine stakeholders, no different than you would see those on-land stakeholders, those fisheries organizations, those the emergency responders in marine areas, the marine excavators, the ports of entry, etc. Right? That's who we try to outreach to. So AIS monitoring is another technology tool that some companies are implementing. It actually geofences the line in those marine areas and will give you a notification if a vessel is traversing into your area. Okay, marine people may think of it as offshore, but we really are concentrating not only offshore, but we really concentrate on those inland waterways, protecting those inland waterways, lakes, bays, rivers, etc. I'm going to talk about anchor drags. There was one off the coast of California a few years ago, right, off the coast of San Pedro. There was also an anchor strike in the Straits of Mackinac that damaged an electrical line and had electrical oil in that area, right? So, so we really want to concentrate on engaging those marine stakeholders. Some of these accident statistics, Unfortunately, an average of one person dies every year, average, from some type of marine pipeline interaction. Our goal is to shrink that number. Okay? So things that happen in a waterway are much more complicated than on land. You can dial 911 on land, and usually you'll get a responder there within 5 or 10 minutes. In a waterway, it may take you 3 or 4 hours. Any kind of spill or release on a waterway, as you know, travels with the water. The impact area of that spill, and even the Olympic incident, unfortunately, hits that waterway and runs for miles. So we really need to concentrate on looking at marine areas and what we can do to help prevent those accidents, and that's what Marine Safe 811 and my organization does. We have a national best practice out, right? I have some copies here sitting at the table. Feel free to come pick one up. We also have training online, marinesafe811.org, right? Everything is free. We're a nonprofit. Everything's in English, Spanish. Much of the practices that you see here are also best practices for on land as well. Again, our organization protects the communities in those waterways and those water supplies. So just a couple of slides left here, but this is kind of the welcome to my world. Don't concentrate on this right now, but as far, I'll explain the graphics. But, you know, we need to close the gap in awareness in safety of pipelines and utilities and waterways, and that's what we do. And we do that by training, education, outreach. We are member funded. And we also challenge those members to look at risk of the waterways and how close that pipeline is. Like, Ed, I don't have a pipeline that crosses a waterway. Well, you might have one just 100 feet away. And if you have a spill 100 feet away and it impacts that waterway, did you not account for that? So how do we challenge companies to think more holistically about their risk management programs? Regulations need to be enhanced around waterways. There is the damage prevention programs that are required by pipeline operators exempt waterways. So that's one of the things we've actually worked with a partnership with Pipeline Safety Trust to actually help possibly, you know, get that into some PHMSA regulations. Actually, many pipeline operators are already doing that. So the welcome to my world is this is an issue going on here in Louisiana right now with fisheries pogie boats. They're going out harvesting menhaden and making dog food, all kinds of products, makeup, whatever it is, which is great. And there's a big bycatch issue. It's like, Ed, what does that have to do with pipeline safety? And so they came to me and they said, because I work with a fisheries organization, on the bottom picture here, you see this big vessel that is going into an area that is basically plowing into the water bottom. And that's where pipelines are. And so you have a fisheries thing where they're trying to fight bycatch and fish kill. And we're trying to look at the impacts also of pipeline safety, which if we look right here, and this was in 1989, there was an 11 fatality pipeline strike by the motor vessel Northumberland, which was the exact same type of pogie boat operation that traversed into a shallow waterway, was wheel washing the bottom. These vessels are 300 feet long. Those propellers are as tall as I am, going into that waterway and struck a pipeline, caught on fire, killed 11 people. The pipeline company also had responsibility here because the pipeline was shallow. And obviously, of course, this is in 1989, but had not done much outreach on pipeline awareness. Marking pipelines and waterways is tough. We see those pipeline markers around. It's hard to mark in waterways. So your awareness has to be at a greater level. We work a lot with the Coast Guard. We work a lot with NOAA, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Those are stakeholder groups that traditionally pipeline operators do not engage unless it's emergency response. We engage on the outreach and safety aspects. So these companies here, we've launched our program about 1.5 years ago. These supporting companies, I'm very proud of them, even though they're not required to do waterway damage prevention programs, they do. And I'm very proud of these companies that have stepped up and supported our program. Okay. One thing also that we're looking at on the gas side is the 5-year inspection interval of waterways. On the liquid side, every 5 years you're supposed to, do an integrity check on your line, but that is not required on the gas side, and we would like to see that. And I'm trying to be fair here. I do represent the industry, but I also represent marine stakeholders. So with that, I have that 3-minute video. Can I play it? Okay. So just to set this up, I think I got it here. Just to set this up,
Today we meet in open session as required by the government in the Sunshine Act to consider the hazardous liquid pipeline strike.
This is the Corpus Christi incident that I was talking about, the 5 fatality incident that happened in 2020.
On August 21st, 2020. The pipeline strike, explosion, and fire occurred at the Epic Marine Terminal in the Corpus Christi Ship Channel in Corpus Christi, Texas. Tragically, 3 crew members aboard the Wayman Boyd and 1 crew member on an adjacent anchor barge died in the explosion and fire. 6 crew members aboard the dredge were seriously injured, one of whom later died from his injuries.
On the morning of August 21st, a total of 18 personnel employed by Orion were working or resting on the dredge and assist boats that included tender boats, anchor barges,
so this is the dredge that hit the pipeline.
Supply barge. The dredge was working in an area between 2 existing mooring dolphins located on the western side of the project, annotated here by the white arrows in the center of the image. On August 21st, about 8:02 a.m. Central Daylight Time, TX-219 was struck by the Wayman Boyd's rotating cutter head, causing a breach in the line that allowed propane gas to escape and form a gas cloud that surrounded the dredge. Epic's Marine Terminal security camera footage that I will now play for you captured the initial breach of the pipeline and the eruption of water and gas, the initial explosion and ensuing fireball that made its way up to the green terminal. For reference, the security camera is looking west at Epic's west dock. Wayman Boyd is just outside of view of the camera on the right-hand side, center line of the frame. A portion of the video prior to the explosion has been sped up to reduce the length of the video. I will pause before starting to allow those that do not wish to view to look away. The video is 76 seconds in length. Viewers' discretion is advised.
So imagine in 76 seconds the amount of gas that was able to escape and the ignition afterward. You're going to look right here, right? This is not fire. This is actually when the dredge or that marine excavation hit the line and the water is boiling up around it. You'll see, he will say the video has ended when the video hasn't, but keep watching down the grain elevator of the ignition area.
Notice the direction of travel of propane gas toward the grain elevators.
So there's still no ignition.
You'll notice the
yet.
shaking of the camera at the initial explosion.
Okay, there's the explosion.
The video has ended.
Keep watching.
Apologies, the video's not ended. The video has ended. Staff believes propane gas that had released from the pipeline TX219 was drawn into the Wayman Boyd's engine room by the ventilation fans and was ignited, causing the explosion. Here's an image from the Coast Guard's helicopter search and rescue overflight when arriving on scene shortly after the accident that depicts the size of the fire and damage to the vessel and surrounding shoreline and terminal.
So my point here is 76 seconds, right? That was the amount of gas released and how far it traveled. And when these operators talk about their monitoring 24/7, they have very sophisticated systems to shut down those lines. We all should be thankful that they do. Something like this could happen, but you got to understand when they close those valves, you got a certain amount of line fill that's going to come out. So I don't want to sugarcoat anything, right? At the end of the day, you just need to be aware of what's going on with those safety potentials. Understand that each one of you can help protect pipelines in your community by promoting the 811 system, whether it is in a waterway or whether it's on land. I want to thank you for your time, and I'm around. Please, if you have any questions or comments, seek me out. I'm a very transparent person. I'll try to answer all your questions. I'll try to, if I can, I'll try to get you some answers. Our website, marinesafe811.org. There's a lot of useful information on there that will even apply in on-land situations. And again, I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to the Pipeline Safety Trust for inviting me.